And we're back after a longer than expected hiatus, back in the House of Wargaming. We have done a full renovation of the command center. This room used to look pretty sad. I don't think it had been upgraded in about 30 years. Faux wood paneling all came out. Everything down to the studs got replaced. We've got a nice new look, nice bright, airy fun. I think we got good sound quality. We're waiting on some furniture yet. We were not quite ready to move into the command center, but we're getting closer all the time, and we've got enough done, enough out of the way. We had some personal demons that needed slaying over the hiatus. I want to thank those of you that chimed in while we were gone, expressing a desire to see more content and, offering prayers. And, of course, we've still got the birds here in the House of Wargaming. In fact, that was one of the things we had to deal with. We had a bird that we rescued from a bad situation, and hopefully in a few weeks, we'll be able to share her and introduce you to the channel. I think you're going to love her. In the meantime, enough about, blank walls. Let's take a look at some projects. We'll start with the figures that I've got hot off the painting table. As you can see, these are a bunch of malcontents and ne'er-do-wells. Rebel Miniatures sells these in their modern line. They are protesters, violent protesters. You get a total of 21 sculpts. You get 3 of these guys here carrying, in this case, this guy is carrying his Louisville Slugger. I got one guy hauling a lead pipe around. They're going to go smash some windows for freedom, maybe burn down some mom and pop stores, because that's what the people are really into. You get 6 of these guys chucking rocks. And, of course, with the red baseball hats, if you really wanted to paint those red to make them protesters of a different stripe, you could. You also get 6 of these guys in the black hoodies who are throwing beer bottles or maybe Molotov cocktails, whatever you want. And then you get 3 of these little bonus fellers carrying the placards. You can paint those however you want. Of course, I've got just your standard protesters, the people that are out protesting at noon on Wednesday because they don't have a job. They'd much rather do that. So then, of course, your general, the federales, the guys protected by the FBI, of course, they're going to be in the employ of multinational mega corporations looking to destabilize first world nations, because that is good for the bottom line, apparently. So we got 21 lovely little dupes here, federal employees to add to the guys in the jackets and the SWAT cops, and they will make an appearance in our superhero comics. And, of course, for some reason, they really hate that cartoon frog. So, say no to the frog. Moving on. One of the great things that happened for me over the vacation was getting to sit down with a whole family and throw some Gaslands down on the table. Gaslands is a great game even for non-miniature wargamers. There's something about the use of Matchbox cars. It feels very board gamey, so you can kind of drag people in. We had a great time sitting around the family table, having a good time, shoving cars around, shooting each other up. Now, what you're looking at here is a racetrack. I don't know how well it's going to work. As you know, I play in half scale. So if we throw a couple of cars out, it's going to look like this. This was very easy, but a bit time-consuming. It's just a tan piece of felt. I threw a stencil down, and you can actually kind of see where the spray paint kind of overlapped. Threw a stencil down, spray painted black, and then I just took red and white. And I used a stencil to try to get my red rectangles here looking good. Looks very track-like. One issue, I went ahead and put down the checkpoints, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can go in various directions. A couple of ways in, so if I want to do more of a dirt track or more of an arena. Again, it's very flat, so I need to build some barricades out on this side that will help kind of block line of sight for those guys that spring for the 360. My big disappointment with this is I think it's a little too big, right? If we look at the rules, it says you want about 4 long, 1, 2, 3. There's 4 long template to get to the first. The nice thing about to get to the first checkpoint, I should say, it's going to be longer to get to the next one. This is going to generate, if you've got 5 or 6 guys around the table, it's going to generate a 2 to 3 hour race, probably a little over much for Gaslands. And because there's no loop-de-loop in the track, that can cause some problems as well. Now, one thing I can do is build some tires or some kind of barricade to direct people around a short track, which gives us some dirt. Great for beginners because most of the race is going to be on asphalt. You're going to get free rerolls on all of your skid checks. So very tight, controlled race. Not a lot of craziness that happens here. But if you're looking for a dedicated track for Gaslands, this is a great way to go. Just takes a little bit of time. Best of all, that Gaslands specific track is cheap. We're looking at about $8 for the felt cloth, $4 or $5 for the spray paint. That's all you need to make a good looking track. You know, paper, masking tape, craft paints. I'm assuming you've got all that already. You're a miniature wargamer. Turning back to the big project for the year, chainmail. I got 2 more armies completed, the first of which is an elven army, and here you can see heavy foot. They look a lot like every other heavy foot that we've seen so far, just painted in a lovely blue and orange. And then we've got heavy cavalry, and these guys are a little bit unique. So there we can see the heavy foot, and here you can see the guys, the mounted guys. Now they are, of course, mounted on chariots. I wanted to give them more of a classical feel, more of a magic feel. When these guys come rolling out of the woods on chariots, and you're like, how are you driving a chariot through the woods? That lets you know that you are not in Kansas anymore. You are on the borders of Elfland. Of course, we got to have giant magic eagle. He looks pretty good. Sam here probably could have gone into the box with all of the NPCs. Spoiler alert, we're going to do heroes in 3mm. We may even be doing some skirmish in 3mm, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So here's our magic eagle, and he will help counter the flyers for the undead. We've got loads of archers in here. That's what these strips are, and then some light infantry. Of course, you got to have guys that are comfortable in the woods. The strips here, there's one strip of kind of irregularly spaced, I think it's 15 guys, so I've got 30 figures on this 2mm base. And again, even at arm's length, you can tell the difference between heavy cavalry, heavy foot, light foot, archers, lots of archers, and then we've got some light cavalry I could show you here too. We'll kind of zoom in a little closer. Just guys on horses. You know, nothing unusual there. Not a whole lot of them. 10 per base. Looking good. And I've got a couple of fancy bases here for the generals, and I just got a pair of chariots that had 4 horses. Those of you that think you might want to do some chariot racing in an arena, this is a very good way to do it, right? You drop these guys down on, you know, even a half-inch counter, and you are literally off to the races. Whatever figures I had left over, in this case, this general's on 4 chariots. It has a couple of 2-horse chariots backing him up. This general has some more heavy cavalry backing him up. So if I need to have a top general and like a sub-general, I can do that. 24 square inches per box. I've got 50 stands of each of those elves, not counting the NPCs. So we'll box these guys up and I'll break those NPCs out. One thing to be aware of, well, you know, before we get there, let me show you one more thing. This is the undead army, and you can see the difference in color, even at arm's length. It's very easy to tell the difference between a heavy foot for the elves and a heavy foot for the undead. Blue, purple, easy peasy. They are the exact same figures, just painted in a different color scheme. But once you've done that at a distance, they look good. And you can see kind of here, look at the bottom of these bases. Blue, purple. It just helps kind of give them a little more pop. Makes them look a little more game piecey than I like. They look like game pieces and not, you know, proper armies. But when you are wargaming at the 2mm scale, these are the kind of compromises you have to make. If we take a quick look at the light infantry. Now, for the undead, I will probably use these light infantry as zombies. So they have a few more. They've got 3 strips, 45 guys on the undead side versus 2 strips, 30 guys for the elves. If I use these as zombies, I may wind up classifying them as, for purposes of attack, maybe they attack as medium infantry. But when you're or light infantry, because they're not very effective, right? They're zombies. What do they know from strategy? But they're really hard to put down because you're looking for the headshots, which means they may defend as heavy infantry and attack as light infantry. That's those bases. You know, if I'd counted a little bit better, I probably would have filled this up too. But hey, if I see more stuff for undead, I've got 3 more spaces. One of the things to be aware of is my elves, I'm done. I got no more room for anybody else. But there is plenty of room at the Undead Inn. As you can see, the undead come with Dark Riders. Look at that guy. A little bit of bone weight for the guy. Now, I've mounted them on little rocks to give them the feeling of elevation. But again, they're stored in a case that is only an inch tall. So what can you do? I didn't want them to come too high because I didn't want to risk breaking them. And then, of course, they'll have the Pale Riders, you know, on a pale horse, right? So we've got some cavalry. I don't know. We've got two different kinds. This may be medium. This may be heavy. Or it may be light and medium depending on the scenario. That's the nice thing about chainmail. Very flexible. And if we compare the archers, they're going to look a little something like this. The elves have a lot more guys. The undead have not quite so many. So I used 3 strips of 2, 4, 6 versus 4 strips of 6. So there you go. Maybe longbow, maybe medium bow. It doesn't matter. You get the idea. When you compare the archers to the heavy infantry, it's pretty obvious, even with the same number of strips, which one has more guys, which one. And I don't know. I don't even know if my camera's going to zoom in tight enough for you to see that these guys do have kind of little bows, maybe. But again, remember, it's an impressionist painting, right? Who wants to look at a Van Gogh this close? Nah, you look at a Van Gogh like that. Not that I'm Van Gogh or nothing. Maybe I'm the Van Gogh of miniature wargaming. Maybe I'm the Van Gogh of 2mm. You might think so based on... Oh, we put that aside. Do we want to look at this one yet? No, not yet. First, we're going to look at the general. And the general is, again, I just had a couple of... I popped a couple of horses off of a cavalry strip, threw them down with some infantry, and easy peasy. Now you got a nice undead lord or general. Now, being the undead, you're probably going to want a necromancer. So you got the same thing here. I had 1 strip of cavalry left over. So I threw that on a base with another... Oh, you know what? These actually are cast generals. That's what's going on there. So I got 2 generals, and I wasn't quite satisfied yet. I wanted to have that necromancer king. So I went to Microworld Games, and I bought 3mm strips. And this was an insanely expensive wizard. I think, oh boy, come on, camera. Come on, help me out here, bud. I think this is about as good as she's going to get. The 2 fellas you see here to the left are our wizards. I mounted them on washers that were about a 1/2 inch across. And then we've got a couple of champions who are mounted on more fell beastie types. Giant screaming lizards. Now these figures are actually part of Microworld's Dark Elf range. That's why they're on the lizards. But given that we've got our fell beasts that are fairly lizardish as well, I think it's a good mix. I think it's a good blend. And then I have 1 more stand for a nice big general. I wanted at least 1 banner in my army, and there he is. You can even see a little 3mm skull on top of it. These strips in the back are how Microworld Games 3mm figures come. If I rotate this around, you can see them a little bit better. 6 to a strip, and that really is kind of the bottom of the barrel scale-wise for seeing the difference between archers versus... I mean, let's be honest here, right? These archers, they could be carrying anything. This is the scale where you actually get into enough detail to see the difference between swordsmen versus hammermen versus whatever. It's a fun little line. Highly recommend you go look it up. I popped off some of the individuals of these command strips, and that's where I got these wizards from. These are actual wizards, and you can see that. They are wildly out of scale compared to the 2mm. They're half again as big, but at this scale, I think it works okay. Yeah, they're bigger, but they're larger than life, which I think that'll be fine. And again, when we're looking at it at arm's reach, really you need to be able to tell the difference between, yeah, that's the hero who's mounted and that's the hero who's not. And I think with that, you're good to go. So moving on to the other heroes that we've got here, we have a very similar situation for the elves, although the elves, I just have the 1 wizard with a staff, and then it's a whole bunch of guys riding magical beasts that look a little something like this. So we'll start with the mounted guys. I know that looks like a horse here on the far right. I think it's actually a unicorn. So this is the same figure, left and right. Again, Microworld Games, and then we've got a nice alicorn or a pegasus. He's got kind of batty wings, but you know, it's an elf. Same color. You can see by the base, and then one guy just mounted on. Oh, there's your unicorn. I think you can just barely make out the horn. And one wizard with a staff, little orange crystal at the top, and then a couple of more command stands for the elves. These guys, again, Microworld Games. And there, you can see the difference between guys with spears, and then these cultists are, what are they armed with? They're just armed with a different kind of spear. So there's your differences. Really great. The problem that you have with Microworld Games is they don't have any human characters. Not a problem. For that, you go over to Odzeal Armies, and I've got those. It's my current work in progress. They sell classical era. If you want Romans, if you want Persians, if you want Greeks in 3mm, go over to Odzeal, and you'll be able to find what you're looking for there. I'm going to use a couple of stands of those for my human heroes. Unfortunately, that means no mounted heroes. But again, when you're doing stuff as wacky as this, when you're going down to a weirdo scale like 3mm, you take what you can get. That's it for chainmail. Let's look at the big boys. This section of the video is for the bibliophiles. To scratch that gaming itch, I picked up a copy of Wargames Illustrated, and here's why. Better campaigning? We're looking at October 2021. Yeah, it's old news. There's an interesting article in here on running wargame campaigns. You know we like campaigns around here. They're a way to elevate your game and play at an elite level. Who is this article by? Picked it up, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it's this is great inspirational wargame, particularly for those of you that play in the giant scales of 25mm plus. But I bought it. They had 5 or 6 back issues, and I bought this issue specifically for the campaigning. And Cigar Box Battles Corey Ring offers some thoughts on the world of tabletop campaigns, and that's really all it is. Now, it's a war game magazine. You know, how in depth do you think you're going to get with the whatever it is, 2,000 words that he's got allotted here? It's not a bad article. But it is kind of basic stuff, right? Oh, make sure you pre-plan. Thank you for that. Just, considerations, using different rule sets, using risk, or the figures from risk. Oh, that's interesting, right? How big to make it, how long. It's not bad. It's not bad. We like to go a little deeper. And so I also picked up a copy of this. Now, one thing I should mention, I've been reading a lot of old books by guys like Tony Bath, Don Featherstone, and those are made available by the Society of the Ancients. Specifically, John Curry has been very good at bringing those things into the 21st century by digitizing them and making them available for about $10 on your Kindle. I've read a number of those over the last year and a half, and we've talked about those. I decided to go straight to the horse's mouth. Went straight to Slingshot. I went straight to the Society of the Ancients. Slingshot, for those of you historical guys, is the I don't know what it is. It's a magazine. Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? I don't know. I'm all over the place. I'm a hot mess. They had a couple of things that you can't get digitally. You got to go with the hard copy. And the first one is Strategos 2. I was like, oh, Strategos N. That's the book that the D&D guys use. That they in the Twin Cities they were playing Strategos N, which is kind of that intermediate step between a straight up Kriegspiel and a miniature war game. And it uses just like, oh, Strategos 2, let's check it out. Well, Philip Sabin from the Society of the Ancients puts together a reasonable Ancients battle system. I haven't fully read it yet. We'll talk about that once I have. But I was kind of like, oh, you know what? It's not Strategos N. So, I bait and switched myself, bro. Not disappointed. I was already ordering Simple Campaigning, and I was like, you know what? If I'm going to pay the ridiculous shipping from Great Britain, I might as well take a flyer on Strategos. And I'm glad I did. It's going to, earn a place on my shelf, if nothing else. But this is what I really wanted. Simple Campaigning. John Graham Lee, Ancient and Medieval Wargame Campaigns. We'll talk about this in a lot more detail later. I don't know how useful it's going to be for me, but I'm glad I picked it up because it's showing me some stuff about medieval war games, and that's really what I want to talk to you about next. And that's where this box comes in. Link in the description, did an interview over on the Chronicles of Not Jay. You need to go subscribe to the Chronicles of Not Jay. It's a really good it's one of my favorite YouTube channels. The guy, he does a lot more naval than I'm used to, but he's also a huge shill for Wiley Games, who also have a YouTube channel with an embarrassingly low number of subscribers. Now, I have heard the name Fistful of Lead for years, and I never really looked into it until I started watching their channels, and then I was kind of like on the fence. I was like, oh man, nah, it uses cards, and it uses like chip activation, and it looked like a whole lot of fiddly bits, and you know here we like to avoid that as much as possible. Playing chainmail, having to track exhaustion and wounds, and I've kind of become more comfortable with table clutter, I guess you could call it. But I'd been remiss. These are good guys, and so I thought, it's time I finally broke down and ordered a copy. I missed out on the hard copy. They have a hardback of Might and Melee. Quick and easy rules for fantastical battles on the tabletop. I think I'm really going to enjoy this game. Now, you can see I actually ordered all 3 volumes. They've got, for their fantasy, it comes in 3 books. Might and Melee. Book 2, Magic and Mages. And Book 3, you can hear me rattling around in here. Be patient. Book 3, Monsters and Mazes. So now you start getting into the straight up fantasy for playing your skirmish battle. All right, that's fine. But first of all, and I like the way they did this. One of the things I really like about this Might and Melee is this is just the combat section. Nice art. Great shots throughout. These are probably from Jay Wiley's collection itself. When I see a picture like this, this makes me want to take up the cross and grab a long pole and start aiming at somebody's cuirass. All right, so there's a little bit of fantasy. But this rule set is mostly medieval and Dark Age. So we're probably going to play a couple of fights like that. And then we've got the 15mm figures. One of the things that back in the day, the way that Gygax and the other luminaries of the hobby did things is they said, hey, I got all these medieval figures. What if I go down to the store and buy a little plastic ogre? And they added, the base is that historical, human-centered, kind of Western European, maybe Eastern European, but that historical collection. And I am really light on these. So that's one of my goals for 2022 is to get more into the historical medieval. And so we'll work our way up to some of the simple campaigning, which is heavily focused on Western Europe. If we look at the campaigns, and this is just a series of campaigns, right? The Angevin Empire, the Millennium Campaign, Europe, 1000 to 1100, and then, Calamitous 14th century. Yeah, there's some Rome in there, but, whatever. So we need to kind of build up to that a little bit more. We're getting there, and so I'm very excited to give this a shot. But before we get to that, after the interview with not Jay, I said, you know what, you're right. I've been remiss. I haven't given this a shot. I've been talking to you guys for 6 months. They've been hyping it up. I'll go ahead. So I went and I ordered these 3 books. And to get started on my Wiley Games collection. And, that way, if I hate the system, I'm only out, whatever it was, like $50 for the 3 books. Well, for some reason, and listen, I'm not naive. I'm not stupid. Neither are you. You know what it is. He said, hey, that guy, well, I'm going to send him the base rules, Fistful of Lead. He sent me Bigger Battles. He sent me Horse and Musket. Not only that, I got, and here's one of the reasons I mention it, Galactic Heroes, Codex Galactica. Complete rules for view. Oh my gosh, jackpot. Now, why did he send me all this free swag? Because presumably he wants me to talk about it on the channel. Now, I'm telling you this, dear viewer, because we want to keep all of this out in the open, right? Here's what's going on. I didn't ask for this. I was going to get to it. I'm more than happy. I like supporting the small game companies. We don't do G-dubs. We don't do the Empire of the Mouse IP on this channel. They do. For some reason, they're like gaga over the Star War. I'm just not. Kind of over it. But be that as it may, didn't ask. Now, this just came. There's no, like, agreement. So, full disclosure, there's no agreement here. There's just, oh, that guy, yeah, we can probably get some publicity. I could very well just spend a dozen videos dumping on these, right, if I hated them. Now, as you can see, these mint in the bag. I still haven't cracked these open yet. We'll get there. I'm going to give you my honest opinion on these. I'm probably going to start with horse and musket because I've been jonesing for a little bit of horse and musket. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. However, to be honest, the fact that I received all of this stuff essentially as a gift is going to color my opinion of these things. How much does it color? I don't care. I'm not making any money here. You guys are smart enough to figure out whether I'm blowing smoke up your butt or not. I'm going to play this game live on the channel. And then, well, not live because I'm going to edit it, obviously. But at a minimum, I'm going to show you what works great, what I struggle with, what I have problems with. So you can expect to see not just Fistful of Lead, not just medieval, not just wizards slinging spells and owlbears. Maybe we can actually have a party that doesn't get eaten by owlbears this time. But we'll start with horse and musket, and then check this out. Now, my concern with this game, and we'll go into it, we'll do a whole video talking about this, was the card-driven activation. I wasn't sure how well it would work. Yeah, well, they sent me one of their handy-dandy decks of cards with jokers, kings, queen. Wait, what is it? Now, these are good-looking cards, right? And these are for the horse and musket. They also sent me the Fistful of Lead Fantasy, which we'll use for straight medieval. Good looking deck of cards. Why would you want these? Well, because the card, you get one card for every figure, and then if you get the right card like this king, yeah, you get to go first. Oh, that's good to know, right? The king of spades, because as with all card games, it goes in reverse alphabetical order. First the spade, then the heart, then the diamond, then the club. So if you have this guy, kablam, you get one of your figures gets to go before anybody else. If you use the queen to activate one of your figures, you automatically recover from shaken for her, and for the heart, I'll get it, see, recover from wounds. So not only do you get to go early, but your figure that you play this on to activate him is going to be healed up. And then you've got, so here's +1 if you're in close combat, because if you're using the jacks with the axe, jacks with the swords. So these are really handy because the rules are right there on them. If you have a figure that waits to the middle, oh, he gets a reroll on the turn. Well, that could be really handy. But now you've got tactical decisions. Here in the House of Wargaming, we're all about meaningful choices. Do I want this figure to go first, or do I want him to go well? Now, if I can wait even longer, right, we get to 6, free reload. Hey, I don't have to use an action to reload. Gravy, baby. And then, of course, we've got roll 2 dice to take the better. This isn't just a +1. If you go essentially last with any of these 2s, you get to roll 2 dice. It's basically a free reroll. So if you're patient, you can do even better. And then aces are wild, so you can spend those whenever you want. They replace any one of these cards. So you've got that going for you as well. Really interesting looking system. The accoutrements that I was afraid of, I got a few of those. I don't think this is enough. I'm gonna be ordering some more. Don't send me any more. I want to send you some money. All right, I want to thank you. And then of course, a little bit more. So the only real, you've got two different, what would you call it, conditions to worry about? Actually 4, I guess. If you're hurt, you get a wounded marker. If you're scared, you get a shock marker. And really, you can only get 2 of these. These you can get as many as you want, but once you get like 3 of them, your figure's gonna start running away. I'm not sure what this is for yet. I haven't gotten there. And then of course a reload marker for the guys that moved and then shot, and then they have to spend a token before, or they have to spend a reload, spend an action reloading. This will remind you, put it next to your guy. You go, oh yeah, you know what, his first action is gonna be reload, and then he can either move or shoot. So I think I probably need a few more of these, but I wanted to show you that those came as well, and it's really not as much of the, quote, fiddly bits on the table as I expected. As if that's not enough, good old Jay also sent me one of these. You might have seen one of these before. Look at this, it's like magic. It measures things, but it's as long as you need it to be. Up to, I don't even know how long this is. I hope it's like 8 feet, right? Because that's how long most tables are. All I need is 3. because I am all about gaming in those small spaces. Hey, this is a lot of talking and a lot of just kind of showing swag. We don't usually do this here. You know, how interesting is it? Hey, look at my collection. Look what I bought. Look what I bought. Look what you could do. Look what you could do. Our next video, we'll get right back into the gaming and right back into the, you know, practical advice and discussions. I haven't cracked it open yet though, but I can tell you this is the I might need to turn this. It's a coaster with the J. Wiley. I may need to turn that into a dice catcher. That could be a lot of fun. I think that's everything I really needed to show you today. Let me look around. Yeah, that's good. And then of course the other big one is, you know, if you're not reading the arcaven.com, if you're not reading the comic books on there, then some of this might be lost on you. We did a little brief review of Slugfest, it's a reskinned version of a fantasy game. It's the basic same basic rule set as Rangers of Shadow Deep, which never really grabbed me. It just seems like I don't know. It just something about it just never grabbed me. So we're not going to play that version. We are going to play, this is Super System. It's the same system. It's the Goal system by Four Color Studios. It's the same as you saw here on the channel in Void Pirates. It's the same as they use in their fantasy game. And it's a really good, solid system. And look at how thick this is, man. It's got a light role-playing game kind of variation in it. It's got tons of powers, but it's really sleek and streamlined. We're going to have a good time with that. And as usual, I am probably going to get, you know, some of this stuff wrong and need plenty of comments. Thanks again as we close out this what to expect kind of preview of 2022. Thanks everybody for being patient with me. We are going to get back into the saddle starting here. This goes live on a Monday, and we're going to try to hit every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the rest of the year. Till then, remember guys, I'm praying for you.